waiting on me. Sorry, guys. My name is Bill Jones, and before I celebrate Paul, we'd like for mutual friend Bert Wall to say a prayer.
Good evening. Can I ask everybody to please bow their heads as we do a prayer? Dear Mother, Father God, creator of this vast universe and all that is divine, Lord, may you bless and guide us today as we celebrate the life of Paul Mengle and the joy along with the many lives that he touched with his kind spirit. Lord, we also ask that you would fill our hearts today with your peace and grace that would give us honor to his legacy. And as we share in the memories of him, may you also give us the strength to clothe ourselves with a kind of compassion, humility, and patience that would make Paul proud. Finally, as we leave here today, help us to remember that you would keep us in perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you, trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord himself is the rock eternal. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, buddy. I didn't expect that video to affect me like it did, but thank you, Ronnie, for putting that together, buddy. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So first off, I'd like to welcome everyone here. With the weather that we have, it's a challenge to get out, and so the effort that you made to come celebrate Paul's life, is appreciated by his friends and family. So I'm going to eulogize him, as per tradition, if you will, but I want to point out first, and I might get off track on my, on all the things I want to say here, so bear with me. So, a true best friend is someone that you ask, it's different than just a friend. A friend is somebody that you look on Facebook, right? Oh, they got a nice picture, cool. Or maybe you call them and catch up, hey, I saw the picture of you, so-and-so. But a true, very best friend is someone that you could unexpectedly walk up to him and say, I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. You can never ask me about it later, but we're going to hurt some people. And your best friend's response is, whose car are we going to take? And, Paul and I were very best friends, and I'm blessed to say that. And your best friend is someone that always has your back. He knows where your secrets are, knows where your skeletons are buried. He probably still has the shovel that helped you, put them away, right? In case you need it again. But that best friend is a person that knows you so very well, and you know him. He knows how to inspire you. He knows how to motivate you and remind you of your unique qualities and the blessings that you have. Between you, you can almost, complete each other's thoughts. Even at times having ESP to call each other to catch up at almost the same time. We were like that. Polly was my very best friend for over 40 years, over half of my lifetime. We're also sad that he's physically gone, and his presence will be missed and always be in our hearts and our memories. But he wouldn't want us to grieve, if you know Paul. So that's why today we're going to celebrate his life. I didn't expect the tears, but when I saw the pictures of him as a child and the innocence of my best friend, it's tough. I turned the picture so I could see him. So it's my honor and privilege today to share some stories and personal memories of Polly's life. Now, I call him Polly. Other people call him Paul. Trish probably called him worse than that, but but I've always referred to him as Polly. So if you hear Polly, you'll know what I'm talking about. We're going to hear some very poignant messages from friends here today and from his beloved sisters that unfortunately couldn't be here. They're actually at their, I think, Cindy's house, his middle sister, in Massachusetts, watching this stream live thanks to Ronnie. Ronnie's profession is this sort of stuff. Ronnie is Trish's son, Paul's stepson, and he did a great job of that video. That was awesome. So they're all gathered in Massachusetts being able to see this, and they regret that they couldn't be here. And so he has an older sister named Linda, and his middle sister, which I actually met a few times, Cindy, and a baby sister, and her name is Tracy. His first wife was named Terry, and he had a daughter, and her name is Tara. She was born in 1979. He also had a second wife named Zan, but his current wife, his beloved wife of 25 years, Miss Trish, which I call her Trishter, okay? Mm-hmm. It's a thing. And Trishter has been like a sister to me. They actually met not much longer after Trish had returned from a trip to China, where she had worked for a computer chip manufacturer. And, Polly, never being shy with the ladies, right? He used the old tried and true bar note napkin to introduce himself to that technique, right? To introduce himself to Trish, and she fell for it. So I was fortunate to have seen my best friend fall in love. And during the time that they were my next door neighbor, I watched their relationship flourish and realized Trish would be that gal that would make him happy for the rest of his life. And she did. I was there for him, for their wedding, actually. I think there was a video there. We actually had to talk him into it, but that's beside the point. And I was his best man, and he was my best man in one of my weddings. I won't say how many I've had, but that's something we have in common. Number of weddings he's had. I won't say anything because my dear gal Kathy is here today, and out of respect for her, I won't talk about that. So he said, Bill, Kathy is the best thing for you. He said, and he's told me this many times. He said, you found a good one. And he said, that's a keeper. You better not mess that up or you're going to have to answer to me. So I'm doing my best, honey. So I met Paul on the first day of my new job in Houston in the early 80s, while he was literally firing the employee that I was taking his place. I went into the office, he said, come on in. And he sat me down at a desk across from the other guy's desk. And I sat there quietly while he fired this guy. Ray knows the story about that. Right in front of me. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we did share a few things in common, like how many times we were married. I won't go into that. And the fact that, he was a boy with 3 girl siblings, one older and 2 younger. I share the same thing. But one of the things I didn't share in common with him was cigars. And you can see a big stogie there. He loved his cigars. He loved the cigar club. Something about, elderly gentlemen sitting around sharing life's experiences in a English-style pub, if you will, gentleman's club minus the pole and the dancers. He enjoyed that camaraderie, and he enjoyed a good cigar. As you can see, one of the pictures, he had one in his, probably one of the last pictures of him, he had a cigar in his pocket. And I'll tell a quick story about, he would always say, hey, you want a cigar? No, I'm okay, I'm good, So one time, one of the cigar stores, I think in Garland, they used to host Friday night poker. Some of you guys may have gone to that. And to kind of bring people in, and they'd buy cigars. That's how they did their thing. So he was like, Bill, you got to come. It's great. It's fun. I'm like, okay, that sounds like fun. So we went. I went for the first time, and he found me from the humidor. He got me a light cigar, a girly cigar, I guess you will. And he said, everybody sits around, plays poker at these tables, and we all smoke cigars, and I was like, that's okay, cool. Well, halfway through the table, I felt that feeling in my gut, and then I felt like something's wrong here. So in order to figure out what to do, I went all in with all my chips on a stupid hand just so I could get kicked off the table. The next thing you know, I'm behind the building. I turned green. I'm back there. I'm throwing up stuff I ate as a teenager. And I hear Paul walk around the parking lot. Bill, where are you? Bill. And I'm, So he comes around the corner and he sees me, and I look over at him, got tears in my eyes, and he goes, "You're not supposed to inhale, dude." And, he said, "Clean yourself up, get back in there." So I did. But, he loved his cigars, but more so, he loved the camaraderie and the experience of sharing life with, like-minded gentlemen like himself. So, another thing he shared that was a unique characteristic was with some celebrities and famous people. To name a few: Elton John, Theodore Roosevelt, Charles Dickens, Richard Burton, Vincent van Gogh, even Neil Young, and the artist formerly known as Prince. Just as we didn't know this about them, not many people knew Polly also dealt with epilepsy. All those people had it too. Statistics say 1 in 100 people are affected by neurological seizures during their lifetime. But he didn't let it define him or change how he chose to live his life. We were pretty competitive, he and I. When we were neighbors, I lived across the parking lot from him. We would go jogging, exercise, run, whatever. And back then, you could run for miles. I couldn't run barely a mile now if I tried. But every time when it came down, there was a spot in the middle of this block that we ran continuously. And when we got to that spot, we would look over at each other and smirk because it was game on. And we sprinted a lot longer than we should have to see who could win. And sometimes he won, sometimes I won. And I'll never forget that. We actually ran a bicycle off the bike path one day, but that's a different story. But that competitiveness between us helped, really contributed to both our business successes, I think. And, you know, and another thing about being competitive with him was I knew enough not to dare him to do something. You know, when you have a best friend, you know, when you make a bet, you better live up to it, right? When you make a dare and the other person accepts it, there's no going back on it. One day we were having lunch and there was a motorcycle. Come on in, guys. Come on in. Welcome. One day we were having lunch and I said, hey, let's go look at these motorcycles at the dealership next door. And he was like, yeah, okay. So we went in and we sat on the motorcycles and felt how they felt and everything, you know. And I was like, man, this is nice. And in my mind, I'm like, I dare you to buy a motorcycle. I dare you. Well, I learned a lesson that day because he whipped out his credit card and he said, by God, if I buy one, you had better buy one. I never ridden a motorcycle in my life. He had. So he actually had his paperwork. He said, Bill, I'm not signing this until you get your credit card out and pick out the color you're getting. And I was like, you know, but he had a red one. I got a black one. Never ridden a motorcycle in my life. So that was the lesson I learned about daring to do anything. But so we shared, you know, some time on a motorcycle. We enjoyed that. We actually would ride around on Saturdays and stuff with a group of guys. And he actually really enjoyed it and even became a charter member of this group called the Wild Pelicans here in Dallas. And he loved it so much, he and a friend, Danny Iceman Beck, Terry's husband at the time, they completed not only one, but a couple of the toughest motorcycle ride challenges in the country. One was called the Saddle Sore 1000, where you leave Dallas and he drove, I don't know, 6 or 8 states somewhere up into middle part of the country and back to Dallas in less than 24 hours. It's tough on your booty to do that. And then I noticed over here, and he did tell me, he wasn't happy with 1,000 miles. He did a 1,500 one as well. So he loved his cigars. He loved his, you know, his motorcycle. He loved his wife. And he also loved his puppies, which you saw in the pictures there. So, you know, he grew up on a large chicken farm. And when I say large, you know, his sisters told me it was pretty large. They also had pigs and sheep. His sister Cindy even had a pet lamb named Ruthie, which was named after her. And there's also a story about a pig they had that happened to get into the front door of the house and ran amok all through the house until they could finally shoo him out of the back. So that was the kind of childhood he had on the farm in Pennsylvania. But Paulie knew he didn't want to be a farmer. He didn't like it at all. But and at 14, he and his sisters and his mom, Miss Betty, and his dad, Paul Sr., moved to upstate New York, where his father, Paul Sr., became a minister in the church. Paulie knew at an early age what he wanted to do, and he went for it. At 15, he was still in school, and he got a job because he said, I want to buy a car. So he got a job as a short order cook, and he bought a car. I recall him telling me it was a red Corvair, not a Corvette, but a Corvair, if anybody knows what that is. But not only did he get his driver's license for a car at 15, at 17, he was one of the youngest in his class to receive a solo airplane pilot's license. You saw the pictures of that. So we could see early on, you know, in Paul's age, he already knew that hard work and dedication could, you could achieve your dreams. And he did just that. So, as he was in high school, the Vietnam War was raging. It was at its peak, actually. Seeing the news on TV and how brutal things were over in Vietnam, young men getting killed. Knowing at his age, coming out of high school, the draft system, he was like, well, I'm going to wind up, drafted and go over there and be at risk. So he and his high school chum, Tommy Hess, decided they would go down to the recruiting office and see what their options were to serve his country. So they walked in, and they had these desks all lined up in the recruiting office, and they had these, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and these spit and polish soldiers in their uniforms. And behind each desk, there was a poster on the wall of, join the Air Force, fly jets, and join the Navy, drive ships, and, all that sort of stuff. Very impressive for young, naive guys, right? So these gentlemen would ask them, can we answer any questions? The recruiters are trying to get you to sign up, right? So they're like, we're just looking. So as they got down towards the end, there was a desk, and there was a sailor in a white uniform and a little white hat, and he had a little black scarf tied around his neck, and his white sailor uniform. And behind it, the poster, if you can envision it, I looked for the picture of it because it exists. There's a picture of a speedboat, like a 16-foot speedboat, two sailors in it, with their scarves blowing, and they got their little hats on. And behind this speedboat they're pulling two bikini-clad, girls in this speedboat. And it says, protect our coast. Join the Coast Guard. And they looked at each other and said, that's what we should do. That looks like the safest thing for us to do, right? So 3 days after his high school graduation, that day, he and Tommy Hess joined the Coast Guard. And Paulie was very proud of his service to the country. You can see the guys at the cigar bar gave him a kind of a going away, Coast Guard cutter there. So, needless to say, those bikini gals on the speedboats didn't really work out for him. So, he actually served on a United States Coast Guard cutter named the Yakutat. It's a 300-foot Coast Guard cutter, initially stationed in Boston, and it had a crew of 150 sailors. That particular ship it has a storied past, and if you join the Coast Guard, you know the history of the Yakutat. It received Military Readiness Award, Performance Awards for high endurance cutters, and signified as the #1 ship in 22 high endurance cutters on the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. So not only was he on a boat, he was on a good one. And so in 1968, as the war raged on, the Yakutat was assigned to the Coast Guard Squadron 3 in Vietnam. So needless to say, protecting the coast had a different meaning at that point for him. It was assigned to interdict communist supply lines by sea, boarding suspected vessels, and conducted naval gunfire support missions along the Mekong Delta. His ship and his crew received distinguished service medals for their participation in the conflict, and also signaled out as the #1 of the 20 cutters sent to Vietnam for its performance and its merit. And as I said, anyone joining the Coast Guard knows the story of that ship. And he's very proud to have served on it. it took several RPG grenades on a mission one day, and several crew members were killed. The steering was knocked out. Paul was injured, had a severe head injury. He actually lost his sight during this massive attack, to the point where the steering on this ship was disabled. So they had to hide during the day, and at night, under cover of darkness, steer this 300-foot ship manually to get it back to safety, and they did that miraculously. So from that severe head injury and a lack of proper treatment in the hospital during the war, that's probably where they think Paul developed epilepsy. We don't know. But he received a National Defense Service Medal, a Good Conduct Award, and an Expert Rifleman Medal while serving on the ship. And he always told me how proud he was to have served our country and on that ship. So returning home from the war in the 70s, he began his successful career as an entrepreneur. In 74, he began an art framing business. Back in the day when we remember the term starving artist, you know, you could paint pictures and stuff, but you didn't have the internet to sell it, right? So you'd bring it to a hotel room like this, and, you know, you'd make a big deal out of maybe in the news or something, and people would come and buy art. So Paulie, being the entrepreneur, he started a business that would frame these. You know, he would bring all his frame samples, and people would buy a piece of art, and then they would buy the frame from him, and they would actually frame it and ship it to them, and became quite a successful business. And while doing that, he was in college. In 78, he received a Bachelor of Science degree in business administration with concentrations in marketing and accounting. And he married his first wife, Terry, in 1978. But this business became such a big success that other people and companies started imitating it, and it became very competitive at that point. So in 79, he joined Tandy Corporation. So people in Texas know Tandy was the owner of Radio Shack, right? So one of the first salespeople selling personal computers in the country for what became Radio Shack. And one of his, I think his most outstanding accomplishment was getting a purchase agreement from Dow Corporation. We know Dow, big chemical company. Back in the day, they used mainframes, and this was the first step for a major corporation to invest in personal computing, and Paul was the one that made that happen. He was a pioneer in the distribution of computer equipment and products and parts, and actually co-founded a very successful business in 81 named ComputerMate, which is where I met him and Bert met him. And then later, he actually started an industrial computer company called Rackware, and that was quite successful as well, just more industrial type computers. So Paulie was a true entrepreneur, and he could sell anything. He could make a simple, boring product sound like it could solve world hunger. Only if you bought it. I learned a lot about sales from him, but with his humility, he always told me I was a much better salesman than he ever was. So sharing these stories, you know, I felt it was important for people to know what Paulie's younger life was like. And, you know, his sisters couldn't be here, as I said earlier, but they sent me some messages that they would like for me to share on their behalf. So I'm going to read some of their stories and memories from the three sisters if I can. And I'll try and read it fast. I know I'm taking longer than I should, but too bad. So each of his sisters were deeply saddened when we learned of our brother Buddy's accident. They call him Buddy. I call him Paulie, whatever anybody else called him. Accident and then his passing. We are grieving, as each of you are. In a perfect world, we would all be with you to share remembrances of him, but the world is not perfect. Due to health issues and distance, none of us are able to be present in person, but we are with you in heart and spirit. So his sister Linda wrote, and I've only read this one time, so forgive me if I don't do it justice, but my memories of my brother are very different because I'm the oldest by 3 years, and we simply did not play much together as children. I do recall hearing stories about trying to climb into his crib with him when he was a newborn, and we also squabbled a fair bit, as kids will do. But my best memories of Buddy are the ways that he helped me as an adult. I was older when I graduated from high school and was working at the chicken farm where we grew up. Buddy was in the Coast Guard, living in Massachusetts. He convinced our mom and dad to allow me to move to his town in Massachusetts so that I could learn to live on my own in my own apartment. He helped me find a job as a nurse's aide, and that led to my 30-year career until my retirement at 65. But wait, there's more. He discovered that I was good at saving my money in a bank account with a low interest rate. So he helped me get an IRA, set it up in the early days so that I could actually retire when it was time. I never learned to drive a car, and so traveling was always very difficult for me. But when Buddy was in town for business after he had moved to Texas, he would visit when possible. He kept in touch by phone, and most recently I learned how to text on my phone, and that was also a way for us to keep in contact. I love my brother, and I miss him a lot. So from his middle sister, Cindy, she says, I don't even know how to start. Every morning as I walk my dog, Clover, my heart hurts a little bit. Whenever Buddy and I talked on the phone, it was usually when I was out walking the dog or dogs, depending on the year. We talked about nothing and everything and solved all the world's problems and wondered why everyone could not do what we thought they should do. When I was 8 years old and he was 15, Buddy took me on a world adventure on my two-wheel bike that was too big for me. I had to fall off of it to get off the bike. Our adventure lasted until I wobbled into a ditch full of water. He picked me up and said, you have to push your bike home. Let's go. And so we did, and the adventures began. He took me fishing that summer and could not figure out why an 8-year-old girl could not be quiet. I was so thrilled to spend time with my hero. I was beside myself. I have lots of stories to tell. Most of them are depicting a brother who could be a real pain sometimes, but also one who loved each of his family members in a specific way. Time flew by and we became adults. Buddy came to visit me when I was in college in Massachusetts. I worked for him for a short time when he had a business selling framed pictures out of a hotel lobby. But I was sad when he moved to Texas. It seemed so far away. Years later, I was able to go visit him and even met some of his friends, including me, at a Haley's Comet camping weekend in Oklahoma. I was teaching college by then and had the best time with him, and perhaps some of you were there that weekend. When my husband passed away last November, Buddy was here on the phone almost daily encouraging me. By then, he was dealing with his own health issues and also grieving a loss of Joan. Throughout Dennis's illness, her husband, Buddy was there in word and spirit, acting as a sounding board, letting me talk through my grief. Buddy was not perfect. He could find that thing that annoyed you and pick at you. He was a prankster and loved goofy dad jokes. But he was important to me in so many ways, and I miss him so much. So his baby sister, Tracy writes, "First, I know all you call him Paul, but to me, he was Buddy. I have very different memories of Buddy with my sisters. I was an oops, whatever that means, and Buddy was 16 years old when I was born. By the time I turned 3, he was out of the house and in the Coast Guard. I do have a postcard from him from his time in the Guard that he sent me specifically to me. It said, 'Hi, Dolly. I was thinking about you today, and I thought that you might like to have a postcard all of your own so you would get some mail. Linda and Cindy will help you read it so that you will know that I love you very much. Love, Buddy.'" And we saw the picture of that postcard. I think there's a photo of it there. I do remember one thing. I woke up to my brother and a friend of his sleeping in the living room, and 2 women I had never seen before sleeping in his bedroom. It turned out that Buddy and his friend were coming home on leave, and they saw these 2 girls hitchhiking. Sounds like Polly. Because their car had broken down. Ever chivalrous? Yeah. And wanting to make sure these 2 women were safe, he brought them home, gave them his room, and helped them get their car repaired the next day. That's just the way he was, always wanting to help people, like when he went into 3rd grade classrooms and helped kids for whom English was a second language. He often told me that when he was doing that, he felt like he was really doing something good. Most of my favorite memories of my brother were after I had become an adult. For a while, my husband James and I would load up the family and head to Texas to see Buddy and Tricia every year. That included the now infamous year when Buddy took James and Andrew fishing, assuring them that they always catch fish on this specific lake. And I've been on that lake too. Of course, they caught nothing. And Buddy would retell the story, shaking his head and swearing that it was a complete anomaly. Or the year he took us to the zoo and there was always one more cool animal to see. Or the time right after he and Trish got Mikey and Bobby was eager to show us, and Buddy was eager to show us how fast he could run, since they loved and nurtured him back to health. He sure loved those dogs. The last time I got to be with him was September 23 in Oklahoma. He was so happy to show us his clubhouse, right? And all of his dogs in the kennels that, that Trish's family has. We took him kayaking, and he was so proud to be able to do more than he thought he could. I will miss Buddy. I will miss his very puny sense of humor and his quick response to anyone in need. I'll even miss his revisionist history of family events. There is usually the way Buddy remembered something and the way the rest of us remembered it. So true. I will remember hearing the pride in his voice when he talked about Ronnie's accomplishments, or about his nieces on Trisha's side, or about Cindy's and my kids. He loved them all fiercely, not quite as much as his bride. I'm just reading what you said. But it was close. I love you, my brother. I'm sure you're telling tall tales to Mom and Dad in heaven. Maybe you and Grandpa are even getting in a heavenly fishing trip. Save us a seat at the table. We'll be together again someday. So, poignant messages from his siblings, and I'm glad we could share that. I know it's lengthy, guys, but it's important that we really know a lot more about Paul than we ever did. So, again, for more than half of my lifetime, Paulie was my very best friend. But he left me as a grieving brother, and I'll miss him. Thank you. And I think Bert and several folks are going to share some thoughts as well. And Bert's going to go first, and then several other gentlemen.
I have a lot of great memories hanging out with Bill and Paul. So I won't bore you with going through a bunch of details and memories, but I do have two short stories. When Bill got to be the manager at Computer Mate, Paul came down from Dallas, where the main office was, and he wanted to make an impression on me. So he picked me up in a silver sports Mercedes. But really impressed me the most as how he was dressed. Because Paul, that was his thing. His nails would be polished. His shirts would be all starched and tight. Pants with the nice crease. And I said, this must be a great company to work for because this guy is awesome, you know. So I got hired, and then Bill and I worked together in the Houston office, and Paul was up in Dallas, like I said. And then I remember going to Paul's house, and I just kind of put my shirts all in one area or together and throw them together in my pants. But when you go to Paul's place, he has all his pants in all colored, coordinated, all in a row with this perfectly ironed or clean and creased, and show what the shirts would be above, all the white shirts, just perfect. And I said, and the thing he always says when you go for a job or interview or try to impress someone, you got to have those tools. And that's what he would call it. He called those items tools because that's what would impress who you're trying to impress by the way you were dressed. Another short story, when Tris and Paul had a place downtown, near downtown Dallas, they had the townhouse, 3-story townhouse. Tris would be upstairs sleeping, and I and Paul would be downstairs. He loved to play darts. So we'd be down throwing darts. And after about, I don't know, because I would come up there from when I was living outside of Houston, I would come up on my sales trips, and Tris, they always take me in. And so Paul and I would hang out and throw darts. You know, it'll be 11 o'clock. We have some little cognac. Next you know, it's 12, and then it's 2. And he said, just do one more game. One more. I said, Paul, I got to get up and go to work in the morning. He said, I do too. So we would stay up to 3 or 4 in the morning throwing darts. So that was the 2 memories that always would stay on my mind. And Paul will always say, another thing that I even use today is that you got to do what you gotta. So when you got a problem or a challenge, you just say, you do what you gotta. That's what he always would say, and I still use that today. And the last thing I want to share is that his generosity. That was the most important thing to me because he always would share that. He would never hold back. And so I'm going to miss him, but I always have the heart in my heart, his spirit, and will stay and last with me.
I don't have the thing, but there's
The schedule?
Yeah, who's up next? Larry, I think, is up next. Can you hear it? Oh, give to mine. Oh, okay. There you go. There you go, Larry. There you are. You want me to turn mine off?
No. The white guy. Bill? He's with Uncle. I can hear my own self. That's kind of spooky. So it's good to see all of Paul's close friends forever and ever, and family. Hopefully we get to know some of you better before this day is concluded. We are kind of at a disadvantage. 51 years, was it, Bill?
40, maybe 45.
Okay. We only had him for 15. Am I right, guys? So anyway, and it started with this. I'm Larry Moore, by the way. I own those things, and that was my second store in Murphy. Day 2, there was Paul. He came in, and every one of them guys, there's several of those in here. You can come up here and whenever look at them, and yeah, there's several in here. Joe Carter, you in here? You in here? Anyway, fantastic guys. These were some of his very closest friends. I will let you know while I'm looking at this. You mentioned, Bill, this story about that. I will tell a short story about that. However, that's not what it's important. The one that made that an icon is right there, Dan Wardlow. He drew all of these. He will be coming up speaking. You can get his autograph if you want to. All right. And that's about how long he's been my friend. Anyway, so I don't have those deep, long memories, but what I have was very special and very precious. I might do something a little bit different here, and this will be short because I am not an orator. So I will make it short. I'm going to use the acrostic on Paul, which means I'm going to take the letters of his name, Paul, and acrostify that. Is that a word? It is now, right? Thank you. We speak our own language at Infuego. So I'll start off with the word Paul. The letter P, and pretty much everyone, and I bet Bill can verify this. He's known him so much longer, but I bet I'm hitting close to home here, because this is what I'd see him every day. We'd all see him every day. So this is kind of what I think everyone has seen and known, and that's what it was. He wasn't Paulie. That's the first time I've heard that. Paulie. According to Paul himself, you know what he called his name? Every time he answered the phone, inside he'd jump up, Mingle. Am I right? Mingle. Okay, back to the letter P. I digress. Paul stands for passionate. Paul was passionate, I think, about everything. And listening to Bill, he was passionate with friends, people, his career. He's told me a lot about his entrepreneur things. And he just had a passion, it seemed like, for everything. His friends, of course. All the customers that come in, he always welcomed them, because there was something very, very unique about Paul. So unique that when I went in there one day, there was this customer come in, and he said, "This one of your employees?" No, he said, "You can you tell me what cigar the owner picked out for me last week?" And I said, "Well, I had no idea who this gentleman was." And I said, well, maybe so. What's your name? He said, well, I was telling you last week my name. And I said, I forgot. And he said, well, is the owner here? I said, well, he is. He said, could you get him for me? I said, well, he's here, but he went, I don't know, to go do something. And he said, I said, who is the owner? And he said, his name's Paul. I said, Paul? Yeah, Mingle, I think it was, Paul. I said, okay. Paul comes in. Paul said, I said, is that the owner right there? He said, yeah. I need to talk to him. I said, well, here's the deal. I'm technically the owner of these Enfuegos. However, I'm just technical the owner. He is the owner by heart. Because there would be customers come in and he would be if I wasn't anywhere around, he would be the first to jump up, and they could just come from Mars. It didn't matter to Paul. Everybody was equal in his eyes. Everybody was the same. And he would jump up because of the way that foundation of the stores developed. He would, if I wasn't around, boy, he was up there, welcome. Is that what he did in business? Yeah, just pretty much, and treated them like they were the most important thing in the world. And we've all talked to people and known people. There's very few that want to tell you all their story. It's the ones that beg information from you. They're special, aren't they? And I think, and they would tell me about you. What'd you do? This and that, this and that. And so I knew from golly, day two, this was a special individual. Now we're going to go to that cigar a big cigar. That's about a quarter of the size. Paul, he was doing something. I was doing something. So this gentleman come in, and Paul goes in there, welcomes him, and he said, okay, let me show you what the new cigar is. You're a new guy? Oh, excellent. He goes back there. Paul didn't smoke little bitty cigars. We've got cigars in there that about the size of Babe Ruth's bat. That's what he gravitated to. And so it was this kid's first time in a cigar shop. So they're back there, and he come out and he said, Larry, this young gentleman, he's so-and-so, it's his first time. And so I got him a good cigar, and I looked, and I said, oh, Lord. He was going to be doing what you was doing. It was a great big giant, it's even the name is gaudy, lunatic. So it was this big. Paul loved those things. I don't know why. It's a mystery to me why he did that. But he would hot box it. That means smoke it super fast. And just like chain smoking, and then he would tell me that it's just so awful tasting. It's bitter when he gets to the end. And I said, Paul, you're smoking that big thing in about 15 minutes. That's a 3-hour smoke. And, but anyway, he would smoke that. I couldn't even watch him smoke that thing because I don't care what size the cigar it was. And the guys tell me if I'm telling a story, he would take a big drag. This way he smoked one. You've seen him, probably, Trish. He would smoke it after every puff. I don't know. Mystery to me, too. He'd smoke it, and it was just like this. If you can see my cheeks, he'd... Am I right? Anyway, so I told him, I said, Paul, there's nobody greater than greeting people and nice or friendly. You're like almost the face of this store. However, this is a young gentleman that's going to be his first cigar, and you're giving him this thing that's that long, that big around. Yeah, I told him it's a great cigar. I said, well, it might be in 20 years for him. I said, once he smokes that guy will never be back. I said, just keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to have some Cigar 101. But it was so funny. But he was passionate about all these guys that are in here, his family, the customers, and like I said, it didn't matter who it was. He would shake hands with Godzilla if he come in and try and sell him a cigar. But he was just so tender-hearted. Am I right, women? That he was just, I've never met anybody with that much passion, which came to compassion that he had for people. And you can get mad at him because he didn't do anything for you to get mad at, but he just had a passion for the people, the friends, his businesses, his adventures, the motorcycles he got you suckered into. He had passion, I think, if it makes any sense, for life, no matter what it was, for life. Let's go down to A now. P.A. He was admirable, which made him respectful, commendable, also adventurous, daring and bold. Was he daring and bold? I strike him that way. I admired him for his perseverance, never giving up. He is worthy of our esteem. Paul would amaze all of us, and all of us were there every day. As you know way better than me, Trish's mother had to be taken care of daily. And it was difficult, I know. Paul wouldn't let no one say the word burden, but he would come in and he took care of her, and day after day, week after week, in Trish. And we would say, I don't know if I could do that. I really don't. Just to take care of your mother-in-law, but he never complained, never said bad words, ugly words, never against her, Trish, nobody, us, no. He felt like it was his his honor to be put in that position to take care of her. It was always a compassionate heart, tender heart that Paul had. We all learned a lot from him, from that, and wanted to be like that, and have to look back in our lives and say, I need to be more like that. And so what a lesson he taught. He didn't even know he was teaching it, but we knew it. So we'll go from A to U. Understanding. Kind of goes along with what I was kind of already talking about. Paul comprehended and grasped people and life, and that kind of indicated to me that he understood and had knowledge that was known to him. I'm going to put a footnote on each one of them, what I just said, except cigars, giving them giant, and you need some knowledge on that. And I'm going to bring you into this, Trish. This might be a good time because I'm getting through, and he knew a lot about everything, a good understanding. However, one thing that might have been lacking a little bit is the understanding of his wife of many long years. And there were some things he quite didn't learn. Some of you have heard this, some of you, most of you have not. You don't know where I'm going with this, do you? I hadn't been there but a year or two, opened that store. And by this time, Paul was into the posse, as we call it. So me and my wife sitting over there, we went to a place called Flying Fish over there in Firewheel. Does anyone know where that is? So we go over there and we go in the go find us a table, and guess who's sitting there? Paul and Trish. So Paul was saying, "Hey guys, here, sit down with us, and you know, have you ever walked up to somebody and seen that look and say, oh, no. I said, Paul, we'll do it later. I saw Trish and had no, Paul, we are going to go over here. Y'all, Paul told me the next day, he said, I am in deep trouble. I said, why is that, Paul? He said, I begged and begged Trish to let's go eat at the fish place. He said, Paul, I have not put on a drop of makeup, no lipstick, no nothing. I am not going to get out in public. Oh, come on, we're just going to the fish place. She said, no, Paul. He finally talked her into it. I guess he could do that, right? He had that way. And he said, she is so mad at me because she said, the very people, of all people to come in and see me, was Larry and Beverly. She looked fine to me. She looked pretty, because probably most of you women, you don't need no makeup. You look just fine. So he said, yeah, she's so mad at me. She hadn't spoken to me. You know, okay, so fast forward 1 month. We are going into Fish City. And we go around the corner. I've got my tray. You ever walked up to somebody and you see that look? And I said, oh no, not again. And he said, Larry, I did it again. She told me I don't have no makeup and blah, blah, blah. He said, what's the odds of that happening again? There is not going to be anybody you know come in there. I guess 30 minutes later, there went me and Bev. And he said, by this time I'm thinking about calling Trish and offering her money or whatever, because I didn't want to lose Paul as a customer and a friend. So anyway, it was a hoot. But that was Paul. Paul was Paul, because Paul was just, we all learned that he was just such a guy, because us guys are stupid. However, there are some things we don't understand, but he has such a kind heart. And did he take you anywhere special for those times? Do you remember? That's been a while back, was it? If not, my wife will give you some money. We'll go do that. So the knowledge Paul has was just, and he's told me about all of his businesses, probably told me about you and so on, and Trish, and they done all of our granite in our house. And I guess he was traveled, had stuff around the world. I guess he just like done it all. And he just done it all because he was adventurous. And I admired that about him, a real man. So we'll come down to the last letter. You're probably tired of hearing me anyway. We'll give it to the Dan Wardlow. L, I'm going to say, stands for loved. Paul was loved. He was loved first by the Lord, his family, and his friends, and those at the store. The store, I will tell you how, to kind of give you a short, and I mean short, history of this store. The reason it was to what it is, when I built that first store in Rockwall, I had 3 customers, 4, and I paid that whole thing out with my cash because I kind of retired way early. And Beverly was part of that thing. And so a lot of that money was hers. So for the first 3 months, I was grossing. Bill, you ready for this? Now, company, I'm committed to it now. Gross, not net, gross, $75 a day. Yeah, I know. My wife's sitting back there. She said, are we going to end up under a bridge on 635? I said, no, because I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew one thing, that it was not about the cigar at all. You can get them anywhere. You can buy them anywhere. It wasn't about that. That's what Bill was saying. You come into a thing that I was having this guy meet this guy meet this guy, putting them all together, and they in turn, before it was over, okay, so Nick, what's your phone number? We'll go to lunch. Because I knew that this is the only way this would work, because they can get their cigars anywhere. And it just kept going and going and going. And I'd meet this, introduce this one to this one, this one, this one. And all stores are that way. And I have told all those guys to do it that way. And the reason there are so many people that's associated with 5 stores now, 68,000 customers amongst those 5. And the reason, and I still push my other guys to, hey Josh, how are you, sir? One of the greatest guys ever right there. He works for me. And Dave back there works for me. There's Joe Carter. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. I knew that the glue that was going to hold all this together was love. And by golly, that is what happened. And Paul was a huge part of that. And so if you go to in Fuego, they sit, and everyone knows everyone, and they truly, actually have love for one another. That love was huge for Paul, because it was something he couldn't help. He just fell in love with him. Now you know what kind of love I'm talking about. Now there may have been some girls fell in love with him. I don't know, Trish. He loved Trish though. That was one of the great things. Trish was loved by him like you would not believe, because we heard about it. And but Paul was he loved. It didn't matter who it was, but he had a special heart for Trish, and he would get so soft spoken and talk about Trish. He was really soft, Trishster. Anyway, I'm going to end it, and here's what I'd like to do. I'll tell you one last sentence about Paul. It threw me off the first couple of times he did it, but afterwards, I knew what he was up to. I would be leaving, or he'd be leaving. He said, hey, Larry. Walk up to me, so serious. He said, would you do me a favor? Yes, Paul, I will. Will you say hello to your lovely bride? Am I right, Joe? I said, I will. Every time. I couldn't get out there with it. I knew what he was going to say, and he'd done it for years and years, and we got together. That's all he'd say. So it's payback time, Trish. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to say it to you. We're not going to say the word bride, of course. But on the count of three, in three time, we're going to say, hello to you, lovely Trish. All right, has everybody got that? All right. On three, we're going to say, hello to lovely Trish. Then you got, okay. 1, 2, 3. Hello, lovely Trish. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for letting me speak.
I guess I'm next, right?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to put it on? Or,
I don't know. Maybe can I just hold it? I'm Dan Wardlow, another cigar guy. I'll be brief. Bert, your prayer for Paul, you said two words that struck me. Fine spirit. That's what you use in it. That was Paul. That's what he had. Fine spirit. Anybody that knew Paul knew that's what he cared about, was just his relationship with you. As a matter of fact, you called him Paulie. We all called him Pablo. That's what he was. On our text messages, it was Pablo. And I know when he finally moved up to Oklahoma, he was still on our text group. We texted him all the time. He was part of that group. He wasn't around, but he was part of that group. He knew everything that was going on. He wanted to know everything that was going on, and we kept him informed. I went up and visited him one time when I was up there, and I don't know if it was February or March or something like that. It was freezing cold. And of course, we had to go have a cigar. We went out to his clubhouse, I think is what he called it. And it was nice and toasty out there. He had a fire going, and we had a cigar out there. It was a great time. But just like Larry said, anytime he talked about you or what say hello to your lovely bride. That was what he did. He was a great guy. We're all going to miss him. We're glad we had him in our lives, because he was a great guy. That's it.
Ray, I think, right? Well, there you are, right? Put it on.
I'm glad to meet y'all. I met Paul in about 1980. So we had about 5 years together. We worked together day and night. We partied together day and night. You know, we did everything together day and night. That was a memorable time for me, those 5 years. So since then, we've kept a close relationship as far as communication is concerned. So what I thought about is that, what do we think when we think of Paul? So this is what I feel, and I think it's what we all feel. So when I say this is how I feel, when I think of Paul, I think it's how we feel. So we're here to remember. Remember him. So when we think of Paul, we think of Trish, because we can't think of one without the other. And that's how it was with Paul. You know, the way his face lit up when he said her name all the time. So when we think of Paul, we think of his love for Trish. When we think of Paul, we think of the most authentic person we ever knew. Paul defined authenticity. He was God's unique creation. What you saw was what you got with Paul. No pretense, no mask, just pure authenticity. God made each of us unique, different from one another, and Paul was a perfect example of that divine promise. When we think of Paul, never once were we angry. Here's something remarkable. I honestly can't think of a single time I was ever angry with Paul. In all the 45 years, I've never angry with him. My best friends, well, I consider Paul, not like with Bill, but he was a close friend. I got angry at most of them. I never came close with Paul. Never gave me a reason to feel angry at him. He always was there. When we think of Paul, his smile, you can see his smile when he talks on the phone. That radiant smile traveled through the phone lines. When Paul whispered, "How's your mother? How's your sister?" You know, I never talked to him when he didn't ask how things are going in my family. But you can always see his smile with his whispered voice. That's what I remember Paul. When we think of Paul, he never complained about his struggles. Never once did I hear him complain. We had the military thing. It caused problems, but living with that uncertainty, never knowing one might come, yet in all years, 0 complaints. Paul never complained. Not to Charlie in the whole lifetime. Never complained. When we think of Paul, his pastor's faith lived through him. So Paul carried that on. His face lit up when he talked about his father and being the pastor. He learned faith at his father's knees. When we think of Paul, quiet success without boasting, that was Paul. He's always very successful. He was incredibly successful. He took him on calls with his customers, and they loved him. We never had to worry about them trying to get another appointment with the customer because they said, "When are you coming back?" So they're always, that's Paul. That's what he did for the business. And when you think of Paul, instant generosity, the shirt off his back. He literally gave me, remember the jackets he gave me? I still have them. 40 years later, when I wear them in the winter in California, I still have them. I'm in Florida. People come up to me and they say, boy, is that a beautiful jacket? It's 40-some years old. That's a God's honest truth. So Paul was generous. He'd give you the shirt off his back. When we think of Paul, 40 years of silent forgiveness. He forgave everybody. I didn't know anything about this, but in my last conversation with him, he told me about the case where he fired an employee. And I didn't know that. And he told me the reason he fired him is because he stole from him. But Paul never let that out with me in 45 years. So I was shocked. I heard about it today. I didn't know that, but that's how forgiving Paul was. He was an absolute saint. When we think of Paul, the whisper, as you know, everybody knows when he talked, he whispered. And so that soft-spoken, almost whispering voice wasn't weakness, it was Paul's strength. Like God's still small voice, we all experienced how his gentle whisper spoke louder than any shout. And when he laughed, that unique, everybody knows when he laughed, that unique expression on his face, you can't forget it, you know? So when I think of Paul, I see that smile. He's past, he's gone. But I think of Paul today as I did the other day, and I'll think about that till I hopefully meet him up there in heaven with our Lord. When we think of Paul, again, always ask about your mother, your family. I mean, it's the first thing you did. How's your mother? How's your sweet sister doing? That was his calling card. That was his trademark. When we think of Paul, we knew we were going to be connected with good people because he had always good people around. So all the people Paul associated with are all good. And you're all part of his heritage. You're a part of his beings. So we're all part of this thing. When we think of Paul, he could keep his secret. And he wanted to keep the excitement away from somebody bought me a slot machine 45 years after I gave it to him. And so I get a knock on the door about 2 months ago. I walk out there and there's a big box and thing. And it was a big box on my doorstep and it weighed 105 pounds. I said, so I looked for the phone. I found the phone number on it. And I says, I don't know what's going on. I didn't order this box. It's 105 pounds. I says, what is this? He says, do you know Charlie Jones? I says, yeah. Well, it's a slot machine. So Charlie bought me a slot machine 40-some years later without me even thinking about it, out of the blue. So I call up Paul, and I says, Paul, I said, do you know what happened? He says, did you get it? I says, yeah. So he didn't even tell me. He didn't want to blow my surprise for Charlie and my surprise. So he kept quiet the whole time. But that was Paul. He didn't want to he could keep a secret. So we think of Paul, it's the same faithful and authentic man his entire lifetime. The same soft-spoken voice, the same unique laugh, the same authentic expressions, whether with customers who loved him or friends who knew him, we all met the same Paul. Never angry, never boastful, never changed, authentic from beginning to end. So when we think of Paul, still Paul in heaven, look gloriously. I visualize Paul in heaven, still with that same gentle, patient, authentic soul we all knew. Still soft-spoken, still with that unique laugh and expression and everybody knows what I'm talking about. Waiting patiently for Trish and the rest of us to join him. Probably already telling God sweet things about Trish and all her families in his gentle whisper. So my prayer to Paul is, Father, we thank you for Paul's nearly 70 years of authentic living, for making him uniquely, wonderfully Paul, proof that you create each of us as individuals different from everyone else, for his devoted love to Trish, for being the same genuine, soft-spoken person to everyone, never once causing anger or frustration of any of us. What a gift. For a smile that brightened our days, for that unique laugh that was so distinctly Paul, for achieving success with humility, for customers who loved him because he loved them first, for never boasting despite many reasons too, for choosing gratitude over complaint, for instant generosity, for 40 years of forgiveness, for gentle whispers that drew us closer to him, for remembering everyone's families, for connecting all of us, for finding joy, waiting for his beloved Trish and all of us. We comfort Trish in all her grief. Let her feel Paul's love still surrounding her. Remind her that Paul waits patiently in heaven, still devoted, still hers. Help us all carry Paul's legacy forward. Loving, he loved Trish, living authentically like Paul did with everyone, succeeding with humility, speaking gently, choosing gratitude, forgiveness, and generosity. Thank you for the gift of Paul, your unique creation, who showed us what it means to be authentically ourselves. Charlie thanks you for a lifetime of friendship. I thank you for my many years of Paul. Everyone thanks you for your time with him. Welcome home, your faithful servant. We know Paul is still smiling, still patient, still authentic, waiting for his Trish and all of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Been lengthy, but everybody had a lot to say, and could probably say a lot more. You know, hearing some of the stories that, especially Larry, you know, as Ray was talking about, you know, we try and envision Paul up in heaven at this point, and I can see him in a big leather chair with a cloud of smoke all around him, with cheeks like that, welcoming the next person to heaven and asking them, "Can I get you a cigar?" So I'm going to close with that, unless. And I'll open it up. If there's anyone else that has something to say that wasn't on the schedule, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts. But if not, we have food. We'd love everybody to stay. I don't know what the weather's like right now. No hurry to get out in it. We have refreshments, and you know, as a way of showing appreciation for everyone to come, Trish has got a really nice spread of food. So please help yourself, and thank you so much for coming and sharing in Paul's life celebration. And, you know, I'll miss him. Trish, would you like to say something? Oh, please make sure that everyone signs the guest registry.